Celebrities marry celebrities. This is a normal thing we all know and see everywhere. But it is always the case there have been many celebrities who found their love for normal people. So we are going to bring to you the list of the 30 male actors who married ordinary girls. One story will make you feel like a real-life love story. 1. Matt Damon and Luciana Barroso. The one and only Matt Damon, who probably has the kind of charm that can melt an iceberg. He famously credits being dragged to a bar one fateful night in Miami for meeting the love of his life, Luciana Barroso. At the time, Damon was in town shooting the film Stuck on You, and after a super long day on set, he claims all he wanted to do was head back to his hotel and crash. But his fellow crew members insisted, "Come on, Matt, just a quick drink." So off he went, somewhat reluctantly, to a nightclub, where Luciana happened to be bartending. One glance across a crowded room, and Damon felt that lightning bolt moment we all secretly dream of. It turned out Lucy, yes, he calls her Lucy, was just as magnetic as he suspected. They got to talking, sparks were flying, and the rest was history. Damon has famously said, "I got lucky. I fell in love with a civilian." And for nearly 2 decades, they've built a life that's surprisingly down to earth for an A-list actor. With 4 kids and a vow renewal that took place on a beautiful island in St. Lucia, they've proven that even Hollywood megastars can find genuine, lasting love in a local watering hole. 2. Seth Meyers and Alexi Ash. Next up is the late-night king himself, Seth Meyers. Before he was hosting Late Night with Seth Meyers, cracking jokes while sipping from his signature mug, he attended a wedding that would change his life forever. Picture the scene. Seth is at the wedding of his former Saturday Night Live castmate, Chris Kattan. There's dancing, there's cake, there's a bunch of comedic folks letting loose. And then his eyes landed on Alexi Ash, a human rights attorney with a wit as sharp as his. Sparks must have been practically visible in the air. The two started chatting, and keep in mind, Meyers is a comedic genius, right? Well, rumor has it that Alexi more than holds her own in the funny department. Seth has gone on record saying, "My wife is sillier than I am," which, come on, is an adorable statement for a comedic mastermind. They fell for each other so hard that they ended up tying the knot in 2013. Now they're parents to 3 kids and have the kind of playful banter that would make any sitcom couple jealous. 3. Jason Schwartzman and Brady Cunningham. If you like quirky indie film vibes, you probably know Jason Schwartzman. From his roles in Wes Anderson films to comedic bits, he's a Hollywood darling with an offbeat edge, and it makes sense that he ended up marrying an equally creative soul, albeit one not in the acting business. Brady Cunningham was working in art and design, and guess what? She's got a killer eye for style. The two got married in 2009, and if you ever catch glimpses of their Los Angeles home, you'll quickly see that their shared creative energies are off the charts. Jason once confessed that he thought turning their rock chimney into a climbing wall would be fun. Brady quickly vetoed that. Hey, every home needs a voice of reason, right? Their marriage is proof that when you pair an offbeat comedic actor with a visionary art director, you get a home full of imaginative flair. 4th, Kieran Culkin and Jazz Charton. We all know Kieran Culkin from his delightfully snarky role as Roman Roy on Succession. If you've caught any of his interviews, you know he's both cheeky and surprisingly shy in certain ways. So it's both adorable and hilarious that his romantic life is basically a rom-com script come true. Kieran married Jazz Charton, who isn't part of the Hollywood circuit. She was formerly in the audio and post-production side of the industry, and she's also described as an artist with a passion for creativity. They met at a bar, with Kieran sending a cheesy pickup line her way. Instead of rolling her eyes, Jazz found him charming enough to continue chatting. They ended up tying the knot in 2013. In 2023, when Kieran won big at the Emmy Awards for his role on Succession, he used his acceptance speech to tease Jazz about adding a 3rd child to their family. He joked, "You said maybe if I win." No pressure. Jazz, just the entire world listening. But that easygoing, playful banter is pretty indicative of their whole relationship. She's not overshadowed by the spotlight, but supports him wholeheartedly. 5. Taylor Lautner and Taylor Dome. Taylor Lautner, the Twilight heartthrob, found love with someone who shares more than just his first name. Taylor Dome, who's now proudly Taylor Lautner after their marriage, is a registered nurse and mental health advocate. But how did a super famous werewolf from Twilight cross paths with an everyday angel in scrubs? Turns out Lautner's sister Makina played matchmaker. She met Taylor Dome at church and thought, "You know who you'd be perfect for? My brother." The rest, as they say, is sparkly vampire history, though in this case the real magic is a down-to-earth romance. Since meeting, they've co-founded the Lemons Foundation, a non-profit focused on mental health. Together, they also launched a mental health podcast. Talk about a power couple dedicated to making a genuine difference. And to top it off, they have the cutest social media presence, leaning into their two Taylors bit with healthy doses of humor. 6. Jon Stewart and Tracy McShane. He's the sharp-witted comedian and former host of The Daily Show. She was a veterinary technician. Together, Jon Stewart and Tracy McShane are an unlikely but utterly delightful duo. They first met on a blind date at a Mexican restaurant. Not exactly the glam red carpet scenario you might imagine, but it was the perfect setting for two hearts looking for something real. This was back in 1996, right after Stewart was fired from his MTV show. You'd think he'd be in a slump, right? But fate had better plans. Tracy once admitted that she'd been telling her friends, "I want someone sweet and funny, like Jon Stewart," after going through a rough breakup. She just never imagined that she'd actually end up meeting and eventually marrying the real Jon Stewart. How's that for manifesting? They dated for a few years, and then Stewart proposed in the coolest, nerdiest way possible, via the New York Times crossword puzzle. He actually got the puzzle's editor to embed clues for Tracy to find, eventually spelling out, "Will you marry me?" 7. Jerry Seinfeld and Jessica Sklar. Seinfeld, the show about nothing, was absolutely everything to a generation of sitcom fans. But for star Jerry Seinfeld, the real big plot twist was meeting Jessica Sklar, who was very much a regular person in the sense that she wasn't a Hollywood celeb. Picture this. Jessica was at the Reebok gym on the Upper West Side in Manhattan, newly married, wearing headphones, filling a water bottle, when Jerry strolled up to her. She wasn't in the mood for jokes, but Jerry gave it a shot anyway. She tried to ignore him at first, but guess who eventually made her laugh? Jerry Seinfeld, of course. At the time, Jessica had only been married for 2 months to a theater heir. So yes, drama ensued when she left that relationship and started dating Jerry. Everyone had their opinions, but clearly it worked out for them. By 1999, they were married and they now share 3 kids. Jerry has often credited Jessica with being an incredibly grounding force, someone who helps keep him connected to real life. 8. Jesse Tyler Ferguson and Justin Mikita. We all know Jesse Tyler Ferguson as the hilarious, bow-tie-rocking Mitchell Pritchett from Modern Family. But behind the scenes, Jesse's own love life has a sweet, down-to-earth ring to it. He fell for Justin Mikita, a lawyer who does incredible work fighting for LGBTQ rights. The duo first locked eyes at, guess where? The gym. They officially started dating around 2011 or so, went public soon after, and by 2013 they were saying "I do" in downtown New York. What makes their story extra special is that they got married just 2 years after same-sex marriage was legalized in New York, a real milestone moment. Since then, they've not only been happily married but also big-time advocates for marriage equality. They co-founded an organization called Tie the Knot to raise funds and awareness for pride issues, selling stylish bow ties as part of the campaign. Today, they're also proud parents of 2 children, building an honest, joyful family that's every bit as warm as the Modern Family we saw on TV. 9. Eddie Redmayne and Hannah Bagshaw. Now, if you're craving a British love story straight out of a fairy tale, look no further than Eddie Redmayne and Hannah Bagshaw. Eddie is the Oscar-winning actor, famous for roles in The Theory of Everything and the Fantastic Beasts series. Hannah used to be a financial publicist, definitely not the typical celebrity route. Their meet-cute actually traces all the way back to their teenage years at neighboring boarding schools in England. Yes, it's very posh sounding, but let's not forget they were just a bunch of kids at the time. Eddie ended up volunteering to model at a charity fashion show Hannah organized. He strutted his stuff on the runway, shirtless, with a bunch of other guys. and apparently teenage Hannah noticed. Fast forward years later, they reconnected at an after-party, and that's when the real sparks took flight. They dated for around 2 years before Eddie popped the question. In 2014, they had a quaint, elegant wedding, and they've been going strong ever since, now with 2 children in tow. 10. Patrick Dempsey and Jillian Fink. Patrick Dempsey, or as Grey's Anatomy fans love to call him, McDreamy, found his real-life person in a decidedly un-Hollywood setting, a hair salon. Jillian Fink was a hairstylist who'd established a name for herself at her deluxe salon in Los Angeles. She used to see the name Patrick Dempsey in her appointment book and wonder if it was some kind of prank. But nope, each time it turned out to be the actual Patrick Dempsey. At first, they were both dating other people, so nothing happened. But those hair appointments added up, and eventually they realized there was more than just a shampoo and trim at stake. There was real chemistry. By 1999, they were married in a quiet backyard ceremony, and now they share 3 kids. Fun twist. Their marriage wasn't all sunshine and roses at one point. Jillian actually filed for divorce in 2015, but they reconciled before it went through, crediting counseling and therapy for helping them fall back in love. Today, they're stronger than ever. 11. Alec Baldwin and Hilaria Thomas. Now we've got Alec Baldwin. Yes, that Alec Baldwin, the 30 rock star, the voice behind countless comedic roles, and once upon a time, one of Hollywood's go-to leading men. But he found his wife in a place you might not expect, a now-defunct vegan restaurant in Union Square called Pure Food and Wine. It was February 2011, and Hilaria Thomas, a yoga instructor fresh out of NYU, who had helped open Yoga Vita, was having dinner with friends. Baldwin, newly single, spotted her. Legend has it his first words were, "I must know you." Smooth? Cheesy? Maybe a little of both. But it worked, apparently. Hilaria was 27 at the time, way younger than Baldwin, and definitely not part of the Hollywood machine. But they clicked, big time. A year later, they were engaged, and soon after, they wed at the Basilica of St. Patrick's old cathedral in New York. They've since welcomed a bundle of children, 7 to be exact. While their relationship has faced public scrutiny for all kinds of reasons, they've remained a united front through it all. 12th, Vince Vaughn and Kyla Weber. You can't think about quick-witted romantic comedies without picturing tall, fast-talking Vince Vaughn. But in real life, Vince isn't about that chaotic Hollywood high life. He's all about calm, steady romance with his wife, Kyla Weber. Kyla hails from Canada, rural Alberta to be exact, and she was working as a real estate agent when Vaughn's movie producer friend introduced them. According to Vaughn, he was pretty nervous at first because Kyla was the best friend of his friend's wife. If something went wrong, that friend group was going to get awkward. But guess what? Nothing went wrong, it went very right. They married in 2010 at a historic mansion in Chicago, near Vaughn's hometown. Since then, Vince has often said that meeting Kyla was like the end of his youth. He was ready to settle down, start a family, and put those raging Hollywood bachelor days behind him. They have 2 children, and if you listen to Vince talk about family life in interviews, you'll hear how smitten he is with having a quiet, stable home away from the chaos of the movie industry. 13. Christian Bale and Sibi. Next, we have the intense yet incredibly talented Christian Bale, an actor who's taken on everything from Batman to a con artist to a race car driver. You might think someone like that would marry another actor or a supermodel, but no. Bale's wife, Sibi, was working as a personal assistant to Winona Ryder when they met. Word on the street is they crossed paths at one of Winona's gatherings, and Christian was immediately drawn to Sibi's grounded energy. She wasn't starstruck at all. She was just doing her job. Something about that confidence and authenticity got Bale's attention. They ran off to Vegas in 2000 and eloped with an Elvis impersonator officiating. Classic. It's been well over 2 decades, and they share 2 kids. In interviews, Bale credits Sibi with keeping him sane, especially considering how deep he goes into method acting. And here's a fun tidbit. Sibi performed stunts as a driver in The Dark Knight Rises. 14. Paul Rudd and Julie Yeager. From Clueless to Ant-Man in the Marvel Universe, Paul Rudd has arguably the most boyish grin in Hollywood. But behind that youthful face is a man who's been happily married for decades, to a woman he met the day he arrived in New York after his big break. After filming Clueless, Paul listened to director Amy Heckerling's advice and got himself a publicist. He walked into the publicist's office, luggage in tow, running late for an audition, stressed to the max. Julie Yeager, who also worked there, offered to help out by dropping his bags at a friend's place. That small act of kindness led Paul to ask her out to lunch a few days later. They married in 2003 and now share 2 children. Paul has often called Julie his rock, the person who keeps him grounded. She mostly stays out of the spotlight, preferring to give Paul the stage while she focuses on her own work. It's refreshingly low-key for a Marvel star to have such a normal, everyday kind of love story, and fans can't get enough of it. 15. George Clooney and Amal Alamuddin. Remember when everyone said George Clooney would never settle down? The eternal bachelor, the Hollywood heartthrob. Yeah, that guy. He shocked the world when he met Amal Alamuddin, a brilliant human rights lawyer, and practically sprinted to the altar. What's interesting about their story is that Amal isn't some random unknown. She's a powerhouse in her own field, but she definitely wasn't a Hollywood star. She stepped into Clooney's orbit when a mutual friend brought her to his Lake Como villa. Clooney has joked that the minute she walked in, the dogs started following her around, and he could see why. She was captivating, confident, and smart as a whip. They married in a lavish ceremony in Venice in 2014, with guests like Bono and Anna Wintour. Now they share twins, Ella and Alexander. And in interviews, Clooney can't stop gushing about how Amal changed his life. One might argue she's not your typical civilian, but she's very much outside the film industry. That's close enough in our books to count as an ordinary person, although if you ask her about her career, it's anything but ordinary. 16. John Cena and Shea Shariatzadeh. When you think of John Cena, you might picture wrestling championships or comedic roles in movies like Trainwreck or his series Peacemaker. But in real life, John's love story is surprisingly sweet and definitely not the typical Hollywood star meets Hollywood star scenario. He crossed paths with Shea Shariatzadeh, a Canadian engineer, at a Vancouver restaurant while filming. The story goes that he saw her from across the room and was so taken, he just had to find a way to talk to her. Shea was working as a product manager for a tech company, focusing on video doorbells. She wasn't starstruck, she was just living her life. Cena was immediately taken by her brains and her beauty. They began dating quietly, staying mostly out of the public eye. In 2020, they had a private wedding in Florida. Today, they pop up occasionally on red carpets, looking smitten and supportive of each other's work. 17. Aaron Paul and Lauren Parsikian. Breaking Bad's Aaron Paul might be known for intense storylines, but off-screen he's got a swoon-worthy romance with Lauren Parsikian, a filmmaker and activist who co-founded the Kind campaign, a nonprofit fighting girl-on-girl bullying. They first met at Coachella, the legendary music festival where so many chance encounters happen. They reconnected later during a trip to Vegas with mutual friends, and apparently they found themselves on a drunken adventure on the streets, spontaneously pretending to get married. Talk about foreshadowing, right? Within a couple of years, they tied the knot for real in 2013. Their wedding was a Parisian carnival-themed extravaganza in Malibu, complete with Ferris wheels. They have a daughter named Story, and if you've ever peeped Aaron's Instagram, you'll see the guy is head over heels, calling Lauren the most magical person and singing her praises every chance he gets. 18. Tobey Maguire and Jennifer Meyer. Tobey Maguire shot to superstardom playing Spider-Man, but behind the scenes, he found love with Jennifer Meyer, a Los Angeles-based jewelry designer. Now, you might argue she wasn't entirely unknown. Her father is a big-time executive in Hollywood. But Jennifer herself was not a public figure or actress. She was quietly building her own business, crafting jewelry that A-listers eventually adored. They met in 2003, reportedly through friends, when Tobey was already a well-known actor. They clicked right away, bonding over shared interests outside of just the film scene. In 2007, they got married in Hawaii. They had 2 children together and spent nearly a decade as a seemingly stable, happy couple. While they ended up splitting in 2016 and finalizing their divorce in 2020, it's still a story worth noting. For many years, Toby was the Hollywood star who made it work with someone from a non-acting background. 19. Nicolas Cage and Rico Shibata. We've arrived at the ever-eccentric Nicolas Cage, whose love life has always been pretty high profile and at times unconventional. His fifth marriage is with Rico Shibata, a woman who was definitely not in the Hollywood scene when they met. They reportedly first got to know each other in Japan, shortly after Nick's previous relationships had ended. Rico was only 26 when they wed, compared to Cage's 57. Despite the significant age gap, they decided to tie the knot in a small, intimate ceremony at the Wynn Hotel in Las Vegas in early 2021. While details about Rico are sparse, she's a very private individual. Cage has spoken glowingly about how she's calm, collected, and doesn't want the attention. He's also shared that their dynamic is full of intellectual curiosity. Love him or hate him for his outlandish roles and personal quirks, you have to admit, it's never a dull moment with Nicolas Cage, and maybe that's exactly why Rico was drawn to him. 20. Rowan Atkinson and Sunetra Sastry. You know him as the bumbling, lovable Mr. Bean, but Rowan Atkinson is in fact a comedic legend with an impressive career spanning decades. He met his wife, Sunetra Sastry, when she was working as a makeup artist at the BBC. This was back in the 80s during the heyday of Atkinson's comedic productions. They formed a connection behind the scenes. He was the star, she was doing makeup for him. They married in 1990, had 2 kids, and by all accounts had a very private and stable life for many years. They eventually divorced in 2015 after 24 years together. Rowan ended up with someone else. While it didn't last, their decades-long marriage began with that behind-the-scenes spark, a comedic actor and the makeup artist who helped him transform into characters, both ordinary in her everyday job and extraordinary in her artistry. 21. David Schwimmer and Zoe Buckman. He'll always be Ross Geller to millions of fans from Friends, but David Schwimmer is also a director and philanthropic advocate. He met Zoe Buckman, a British artist and photographer, while he was in London directing Run, Fat Boy, Run. Zoe was waitressing at the Cuckoo Club at the time. It was a straightforward scenario. Schwimmer was a patron, she was serving his table, they struck up a friendly conversation. Soon, friendly conversation turned into transatlantic visits, and eventually romance blossomed. In 2010, they married in a private ceremony, and the following year welcomed their daughter Cleo. They separated in 2017, but for much of their marriage, it was a classic Hollywood star meets everyday girl story, at least on paper. In reality, Zoe is quite the creative force, exploring photography and fine arts. But she was definitely not a big celebrity name when they fell in love. 22nd. Ken Jeong and Tran Jeong. Actor and comedian Ken Jeong is best known for his outrageous comedic roles in The Hangover, Community, and for being a judge on The Masked Singer. But before he hit it big in Hollywood, Ken was actually a practicing physician. That's right, doctor. Ken is a real thing. He met Tran Ho, now Tran Jeong, who is also a doctor, back when they were both working in healthcare. She's not a celebrity, never chased a spotlight, and in fact, she continues to practice medicine. They married in 2004, long before Ken became a household name in comedy. One of the most touching aspects of their story is how Ken credits Tran for saving his life, figuratively and literally. When Tran battled cancer, Ken was at her side constantly, and when Ken's comedic career took off, she was the supportive partner who told him to take the leap of faith to fully pursue Hollywood. Even in interviews, Ken gets emotional talking about how Tran is the real hero. She beat cancer and encouraged him to chase his dreams. 23rd. Jeff Bridges and Susan Geston. Jeff Bridges has the laid-back persona of the dude from The Big Lebowski, but in real life, he's a bit more of a romantic. He met his wife, Susan Geston, in 1975 when she was working as a waitress in Paradise Valley, Montana. Bridges was there filming Rancho Deluxe. He spotted Susan at the cafe, was immediately smitten by her energy, and asked her out. She said no. Undeterred, Bridges kept bumping into her around town, and eventually he convinced her to go on a date. They married 2 years later. Fast forward nearly 5 decades, and they're still together, a rarity by Hollywood standards. Bridges often tells this story in interviews, crediting Susan for seeing the real him, not just an actor. She balanced him, challenged him, and built a family with him. They have 3 daughters and now a few grandchildren, and their love story remains one of the longest-lasting in Tinseltown. 24th. Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Tasha Macaulay. Joseph Gordon-Levitt grew up on camera, from Third Rock from the Sun to blockbuster hits like Inception and The Dark Knight Rises. But when it came to choosing a life partner, Joe went for someone completely outside the showbiz hustle, Tasha Macaulay, a tech entrepreneur and robotics expert. They met through mutual friends at a gathering that was anything but Hollywood, a sort of intellectual entrepreneurs meetup. Tasha, who co-founded a robotics company, was not exactly starry-eyed at the prospect of dating an actor. She's known for her academic chops and entrepreneurial drive. But they clicked, probably bonding over a shared fascination with innovative thinking. They married in a super-secret ceremony in December 2014 and now share 2 kids. Joseph is famously private, and Tasha is rarely seen in the public eye, which suits them just fine. He's mentioned that he wants his kids to have as normal a life as possible, and Tasha, with her non-Hollywood background, helps make that happen. 25. Chris O'Donnell and Caroline Fentress. Chris O'Donnell became a teen heartthrob in the 90s, especially for roles in Scent of a Woman and Batman and Robin. But guess how he met his wife, Caroline Fentress? She was an elementary school teacher, completely outside the Hollywood bubble. They actually crossed paths because Chris was friends with Caroline's brother. At one point, Chris stayed in Caroline's apartment during a weekend visit. He later joked that he developed a crush on Caroline while essentially crashing on her couch. They started dating, and Chris quickly realized she was the one. They married in 1997 and now have 5 children. For Chris, who's described himself as a devout Catholic and a family man, having a grounded partner like Caroline has been crucial. He's talked openly about balancing work and family and how Caroline's normalcy keeps him centered. 26. Kevin Costner and Christine Baumgartner. From The Bodyguard to Yellowstone, Kevin Costner has been the quintessential leading man for decades. But the woman he ultimately married, Christine Baumgartner, wasn't a movie star or singer or any of that. She was a handbag designer, albeit one with a flair for style and a connection to the fashion world. They first met on a golf course in the late 90s when Kevin was going through a divorce. He was initially hesitant to get involved with someone new, especially someone younger. But Christine's calm, creative spirit won him over. After years of dating and a brief breakup, they reconciled, and Kevin realized he didn't want to let her go. They tied the knot in 2004 at his ranch in Aspen. The wedding was picturesque, with the Rocky Mountains as the backdrop. They have 3 children together, adding to Costner's brood from his previous relationships. Though they recently faced a very public divorce filing in 2023, for nearly 2 decades, Christine was the ordinary woman who built a life with Hollywood's leading man. 27th. Misha Collins and Victoria Van Tuck. Misha Collins, beloved by fans for his role as the Angel Castiel on Supernatural, has a real-life love story that's pretty off the beaten path. He married Victoria Van Tuck, a historian and writer who definitely wasn't caught up in Hollywood. They were high school English classmates who reconnected in college. Vicky went on to earn advanced degrees, including a doctorate, and wrote books on some fascinating topics, including the history of threesomes in America. Yes, you heard that right. Meanwhile, Misha was building an acting career. They got married in 2001, long before Supernatural turned Misha into a fan favorite. They keep a relatively low profile, though they occasionally show up at fan conventions. They share 2 kids, and Misha openly credits Victoria's intelligence and broad worldview for helping him stay grounded amidst the sometimes crazy fandom hype. 28th. Pierce Brosnan and Keely Shea Smith. Say hello to Pierce Brosnan, the suave Irish actor who portrayed James Bond. He's had his fair share of heartbreak, but he found lasting love again with Keely Shea Smith, who was working as a journalist and TV correspondent when they met. They first locked eyes at a beach party in Mexico in 1994, and it wasn't long before Brosnan was head over heels. He's famously said that Keely helped him through some of his darkest times, providing a sense of normalcy that he desperately needed. They married in 2001 in a fairy tale Irish ceremony at Ballintubber Abbey. Over the years, Keely's career in journalism took a back seat to raising their 2 children. Fans have watched as the couple consistently shows up for each other, whether on the red carpet or strolling on a beach. Pierce has often made headlines for shutting down body shamers who criticize Keely's appearance, staunchly defending the love of his life. It's a romance that's more than just Bond glamour. It's genuine devotion. 29th, Josh Brolin and Catherine Boyd. Rounding out our list is Josh Brolin, known for everything from playing Thanos in the Marvel Cinematic Universe to starring in classics like The Goonies and No Country for Old Men. He ended up marrying Catherine Boyd, who initially worked as his personal assistant. Talk about a power imbalance that can get tricky, but their relationship grew into a genuine partnership. They got engaged in 2015 and married a year later. Catherine eventually pivoted from assisting to modeling and even launched her own clothing line. The pair share 2 daughters, adding to Josh's 2 older kids from his previous relationships. While some folks raise their eyebrows at boss-employee romances, Brolin insists it's a genuine love story that blossomed organically. They're frequently seen together at events, with Brolin praising Catherine for transforming his life in countless ways, helping him leave behind some of his wilder days to become a more grounded family man. 30. Riz Ahmed and Fatima Farheen Mirza. You might know Riz Ahmed from his powerful roles in Sound of Metal, Nightcrawler, or Rogue One, a Star Wars story. He's basically the epitome of a versatile actor who can do everything from intense drama to sci-fi. But did you know that his real-life love story could rival the charm of any rom-com? In a modern-day twist, they first crossed paths in a coffee shop. Think about it. One second you're jostling over the only available outlet, and the next you're meeting your future spouse. For Riz Ahmed and Fatima Farheen Mirza, the brilliant novelist behind A Place for Us, that was exactly how it happened. They were total strangers, both needing to charge their laptops. A conversation sparked. The conversation turned into a connection. The connection turned into romance, and eventually they had a secret pandemic wedding. In 2021, they made headlines with an instantly viral moment on the Oscars red carpet. Remember that sweet snippet of Riz gently fixing Fatima's hair before their big appearance?